All right, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll just give it 1 minute to give everybody a second to log on for our webinar today. All right. Thank you for being back with us for another important topic that we're really excited to talk about today. So before we get started, I just want to let you know that we are in a different location. As you might see, we are in Wallingford, Connecticut at the Wallingford Fire Department Company 7 North Farm Station. So we are here live at the fire department. So there is a chance you might hear some calls coming through over the intercom. So just be aware of that. If we hear anything, we're obviously just going to keep going. So as many of you might know, my name is Mike Papale. I'm the manager of community relations here at the FibTech. I'm joined by a very special guest that I'm excited to tell you more about. Bob, thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you hear us talk about how our mission is to help save lives from sudden cardiac arrest. And it's really the focus of what we do each and every single day at the FibTech and at our jobs. And today, I'm really excited to share the story about the day that I survived sudden cardiac arrest. And Bob was actually the rescuer that responded and found me and helped save my life. So we're going to talk about that story, talk about that day, and kind of talk about our relationship that has developed and blossomed since that day. So before we talk about that particular day where I had sudden cardiac arrest, I just want to kind of set the stage for you all. And, one of the things that's really important for people to understand is that sudden cardiac arrest affects anyone and everyone. It does not discriminate. It can affect younger people. It can affect older people. It oftentimes affects people that are seemingly healthy. And that was the case with me. When I was growing up, I was a very competitive basketball player. I was a really healthy guy. Every year I went and saw my doctor, and he listened to my heart, and he did the other tests that you do when you go see for your annual physical. And every conversation was pretty much the same. I walked out the door and told me I was really healthy and to just keep doing what I was doing. And there was never a time where my family, my doctor ever thought that I could possibly have something wrong with my heart. As a matter of fact, we didn't think that heart disease could even affect somebody my age. Unfortunately, we were wrong. And when I was going in between my junior and senior year of high school, I spent the first half of my summer traveling all around, playing in these different basketball tournaments and basketball showcases and trying to make my dream to be a college basketball player come true. And again, there was never any issues during any games or practices. And towards the end of the summer, I was a camp counselor at my dad's basketball camp that he ran annually. And this was a big part of the summer because growing up, my brother, myself, and our friends, we always went to this camp. And at this point in our lives, we were counselors because we had outgrown it a bit. So it was the last week of summer before school was getting started. And it was Wednesday night, and my brother and I was 17, he was 13. We decided that the next morning we were going to wake up and go do a basketball workout early in the morning before we had to go work at the camp. So that next morning, August 24th, 2006, my brother and I, we woke up at about 6 a.m. One of our friends came to pick us up. We went over and did a basketball workout at a local prep school, and I can still remember the workout to this day. It was completely fine, completely normal. There was really nothing that stood out that would have made any of us think that something would be different that day. After the workout ended at about 8 a.m., we went over to the Wallingford Parks and Recreation Center, which is about less than a mile than we're sitting right now. And I walked in at about 8 a.m. and said hi to my dad and ordered lunch and changed my shirt. And I don't remember anything else that happened that day. So between 8 a.m. and about 10:30, I was a typical, camp counselor. I was, coaching kids, refereeing, playing games, putting the kids through drills. And we had just come inside at 10:30, and I was sitting on the bleachers. My best friend was sitting next to me, and I had a bunch of kids surrounding me. And out of nowhere, I just kind of, face planted onto the ground. And nobody really understood at the time, but I went into sudden cardiac arrest. And when someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest, immediate CPR and the quick use of an AED are crucial to someone surviving. Unfortunately for me, nobody provided CPR immediately, and the building that I was in did not have an AED in it. So those two factors alone made my chances of survival very, very slim. I was fortunate that somebody called 911, and where the Parks and Recreation Center sits in Wallingford, it's in a bit of an office park, and there's office buildings around. And Bob was sitting at his desk, and the 911 call went out. And I'm actually, Bob, you can take over from here and kind of talk about, what happened.
Right. So my name is Bob Hebner. At the time, and I still am a volunteer responder, first responder for the town of Wallingford. But at the time, as a firefighter, EMT, and I had just gone through the advanced training as a CPR instructor because I needed to know more. But when just so that there may be some people out there that know how the response works, but I was not freelancing. What happened is, as a volunteer, I had a pager. My pager happened to be on scan all, not set specifically to Company 7 for some reason. And I heard a general call come in, a Bravo call, a very low-level call that said, young person down, injured at the Park and Rec, unknown information. And at the time I heard it, I go, well, somebody must have probably got bopped in the nose or just fell and hurt themselves. And I just happen to know that, the response from the town was mostly on the other side of town. And at the time, I wasn't extremely busy. The company I was working with, it was really important. That was part of my employment kind of agreement was, hey, I've been volunteering and I want to continue to volunteer, and they very much supported it. So if I had to go to a call, I could, just pretty much make arrangements and leave and go and respond as best I could. And I wasn't busy that day. And Joyce, who was working with me, goes, Bob, go see what happened. Go see if you can help. I said, and there was something that was different about that call. I'm like, it's a Bravo call. I'd seen the kids out at the playing basketball, and you always saw them. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably just something minor, but let me just take a walk. It's a beautiful day. Yeah. So I grabbed my bag and I happened to walk over there. And as I knocked on the back door, I could hear pandemonium going on. And then actually, whoever answered the door, fortunately, I knew enough to block the door with my foot, and they pushed it really hard. And it hit me in the head and hit my foot and almost set me back and kind of set me off a little bit, like, well, you just hit me in the head, And when I got in the door, the person who had opened it was ghost white. I don't even know who it was. I stepped in and the place was just kids scrambling everywhere. And I look and there's somebody down on the ground and nobody's doing CPR and they're holding his feet up. So I'm thinking, well, maybe he just passed out. And then as I approached, I noticed he's blue. I mean, he's a deep blue, cyanotic, and that means he's not breathing and he's kind of gasping. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got somebody that's in cardiac arrest, because I had just gone through all the training. Now, as a first responder, it's kind of a calling that you want to help people. And I always, took it upon myself to try to get a little bit more training and really understand it. And going on a lot of calls with CPR and administering CPR things, people with cardiac arrest or heart attacks or whatever, you just know it's a bad situation. So I was able to quickly get somebody's attention, get them to call 911 and say, this is more of an emergency than a Bravo call, escalate it. I need full assistance and come to the back of the building because it's a pretty big building. And I asked someone to make sure they opened the door and guided them in as soon as they got there. And I was able to I had my CPR bag, and here comes a call now. Got my mask out and opened up I don't even think I opened up your shirt because you had just a thin t-shirt on, and tried to clear people away a little bit and started CPR. People actually tried to stop me because they didn't understand what was going on. Mm-hmm. And what it was is he was agonal breathing. He was gasping. He was doing his last breath. He was, and people thought he was breathing. They thought I was trying to hurt you. And it wasn't, but that comes from experience of seeing people actually doing that and knowing that you still have to render aid. And they do more of it, the education now than they did back then. So anyway, I was able to do very high performance CPR, mostly because of the training I had just really completed. And whatever. And I knew there wasn't a defibrillator. I had one in the building next to us, but that wasn't coming. And I have no concept of time. I just know I did CPR for a long time and had a few discussions with people who were trying to stop me. And anyway, when they came in, the paramedics came right in through the back door. They were guided in, came right in. They knew what they had. They knew how they had a full cardiac arrest. The call is still coming in. And with that, they started doing their aid, but they asked me to continue CPR. And then, I helped them through the process. And he was very lucky that day because we had some of the best paramedics, in the state. And we even had one on training who's now a battalion chief.
Yeah.
So I knew we were in good hands, but I also knew we were way behind the curve because based on the time that the call came in, I knew he had been down at least already 8 minutes before I got there. And I was performing CPR for an extended length of time, and I was getting pretty close to my exhaustion point. But anyway, when the paramedics came in, they got a line in them, got the pads on you. I backed off. I helped hold the bag, and they go, "Clear, we're going to shock them." And I was watching the chatter on the system that they were using. And one of the most beautiful sights I ever saw was, boom, they shocked him. And I see his heartbeat come back. I'm like, wow, this worked. And we might have a chance here. Got him on a stretcher and got you out of there. And when he left, it was just like, as quick as it happened and I walked in, it was like over with. Because now he's in the transport, he's going. They've got 3 paramedics and 1 driving. They don't need me to continue. I'm completely exhausted. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And then people are like scrambling, what's going on? The police showed up, things like that. I'm like, I got to go back to work. And that's one of the things, people don't realize. I mean, we're kind of geared to responding, especially volunteers and stuff, but you got to go back to your life. And it's a big event. You kind of hit the reset button, you go back, I walk in the door, and it's like the reality of what the heck just happened. And Joyce goes, "So what thing?" I'm like, I think I just did CPR on a young man. And I had a son 1 year, I didn't even know I'd never seen Mike before. And I had a son younger and a son older than Mike. He was right in the middle. So I consider Mike my 3rd son by breath, 2 by birth and 1 by breath. And I was just, the stress of the day, and I kind of like playing in my mind and kind of continued on. And then when I called my wife and explained to her, my wife happens to be a nurse, so she gets the medical portion of it and the response. And when we met up after we got back from work and met at the house, it kind of like, that's where I fell apart because I'm like, holy moly, I just had a young man die, and I'm hoping he's okay. But as a responder, a lot of times you don't know what happens once they leave your care. Now, like I said, I wasn't officially dispatched, but I was part of the system, and I just kind of did the best that I could based on the training that I was provided and would do if I was dispatched. So anyway, with that, I was contacted afterwards and told that he had survived. Young man was Mike. They told me his first name was Mike, and I had permission from the family to discuss it. And it was going to be a tough, long night. And my wife and I sat outside and prayed.
It's one of the things we talk about is the situation that you're in is you've responded to these emergencies before, and a lot of times you don't know what happens, right? You do what you're trained to do. You show up and you do everything you possibly can do to help save somebody. And a lot of times you don't know the outcome. And I'm just kind of curious. You're sitting there and I guess kind of before you found out that I was going to be okay. I can't imagine what that feeling is like, just kind of like not knowing, right? It's got to be a challenging
Yeah, I
feeling.
mean, and again, because cardiac arrest, I mean, especially witness cardiac arrest, it happens, but the chance as a, fire department, EMS, we're responding quite a ways down the line from it happening. So the
Mhm.
chances of, if we're the first to start it,
Yeah.
well, you're probably not gonna,
Mhm.
your chances are slim that you're gonna survive it.
Yeah.
You're gonna survive if somebody starts right away.
Right.
And if there's a defibrillator there right away.
Yeah.
I didn't have a defibrillator. I wish I had had a defibrillator. There is a defibrillator there now due to
Right.
my, and they should be everywhere, because when there's a lot of trained first responders out there, nursing staff, other people, Boy Scouts, they're willing to do something, but they need equipment. They
Mhm.
need the units
Right.
available and publicly available, not in a locked box or anything like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So I got very lucky. I consider myself extremely lucky that everything lined up that day and I performed high quality CPR, but he was also an extreme athlete.
Mhm.
Things just lined up and he had some great paramedic care afterwards, but it sure would have been a lot easier and probably a better outcome for you and for me if
Mhm.
I'd have had a defibrillator,
Mhm. Right. Right.
without a doubt, because I could have done that next step in the chain of survival, but I didn't have it, so I just continued what I had.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the response was within a time frame, and they were prepared through being alerted. And when they came in, it was less than a minute before
Mhm.
they actually shocked you.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to kind of bring people up to speed on, Bob, and the paramedics, the EMTs, they did everything that they needed to do. And like Bob said, they did get a heartbeat and a pulse back, and rushed me to the hospital. So I actually was rushed to Midstate Medical Center in Meriden, Connecticut. And from there, they rushed me to Connecticut Children's Medical Center in Hartford. And just want to kind of talk a little bit about my family, because obviously I don't remember any of this, but my 13-year-old brother watched this whole thing happen. My dad watched this whole thing happen, and a lot of times we talk about the importance of bystander CPR and the importance of being aware, because you want to be able to help if somebody collapses, and whether you love them or know them or don't at all, you want to feel empowered to help. And they weren't at that point. They just had never been trained, they had never been certified, and they didn't know how to react. And when I teach classes and when we talk about this, that's one of the big things we talk about, is you never know whose life you're going to have to help save. And my mom was at home and she got the call that mothers aren't supposed to get, that something was terribly wrong with one of her sons. And she drove, and as she was driving to find me at the Parks and Recreation Center, she kept saying to herself, as long as I don't hear an ambulance, everything's okay. And by the time I get there, he's going to be sitting up and fine. And as she turned onto the road where we were, she heard the ambulance and saw it fly by her. And on top of that, she saw my dad sitting in the front seat, and immediately kind of triggered her to think this must be really bad if they didn't allow him to be back there with me. So, I ended up at Connecticut Children's Medical Center, and the first night I was in the hospital, my doctor, who ended up being my cardiologist, she sat my parents down and told them that I had heart disease, most likely, and kind of that they were going to figure out what was wrong and what caused a sudden cardiac arrest. Because most people, it does happen, but most people don't go into sudden cardiac arrest for no reason at all. So my parents just couldn't believe that their young, healthy 17-year-old son could have something wrong with their heart. And almost to the point where they, and I give them a hard time about this, but argued with the doctor and said that you're wrong. There's no way that he could have heart disease. I mean, look at him. He's young, he's healthy, he's athletic. And we were just so unaware that heart disease affected young people. And there are these genetic conditions that, people were living with that they didn't know about. And it was very, very, eye-opening experience. And for me, I was unconscious the first night, and I eventually woke up and recognized my parents, but I had no short-term memory. So when I woke up, I would ask my parents where I was, why I was there, what had happened, and I would look at them and they'd tell me very carefully, and a minute later, I would ask them the same question again. And this actually lasted for a couple of days, where people would bring in a card, a get well card, and I would read it and I would put it down, and then I would ask my mom if I could read the card again, like I had never read it before. And this is probably due to the lack of time before CPR was started and the lack of oxygen that was going to my brain before Bob came and started, performing CPR. So eventually I ended up kind of started acting normal again. And the first day I remember being in the hospital was when they put me through a bunch of testing to determine what had caused the sudden cardiac arrest. Echocardiograms, cardiac MRIs, cardiac catheterization. And it was a pretty grueling day, to say the least. And after it all, my doctor told me that I was diagnosed with a disease called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And basically what it is it's in a large heart muscle, and it affects everybody a little bit differently. Some people have day-to-day symptoms where they struggle walking up a flight of stairs, or they get short of breath really easily, or they'll get chest pain. For me, I never really had any symptoms, except for the worst possible symptom, which is sudden cardiac arrest. And for young people, unfortunately, a lot of times sudden cardiac arrest is the first symptom of the heart disease, and that was the case for me. So we spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. My family was there with me. I left, was told I would never play basketball again. They surgically implanted an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, also known as an ICD, into my chest, which is basically a defib in my chest, and it's there to protect me. I still have it to this day, and put me on some medication and sent me on my way. And we came home from the hospital, and it was just a kind of complete shock of what had just happened over the last 2 weeks, and a lot of mixed emotions of being really thankful that I was okay and I was going to go on with my life. But after being home for a couple of days, my parents told me that we were going over to the firehouse to meet the people that helped save my life. And as a 17-year-old kid, I have to say this was like a really hard thing to come to terms with. It was really hard to understand, how do you act and what do you say to someone in a group of people who saved your life, who, if it wasn't for them being there, you would have died that day. And I remember driving up to the firehouse, and Bob was standing outside, and the other EMTs that responded were standing next to him. And we were just talking about this before, but I mean, when you look at those people, you literally see, superheroes, right? These are the people that, took the time out of the day to rescue you. And if it weren't for them, you wouldn't be here. And I remember being really nervous about it. And I walked up, and, we've made it into a bit of a joke now, but the Bob broke the ice really nicely and said, the last time we were together, my mouth was on your mouth. And everybody got a laugh out of it, and it kind of broke the ice for the day. And I want to talk a little bit about that day, but just kind of want to hear from you, Bob. Like, you don't get to do that often.
No,
I just kind of want to hear about your thoughts on that day and having the opportunity to do that.
yeah, I mean, I look at it, I'm truly blessed, one, that I was able to be a responder and do the things I do, but to perform CPR to the level I did when we did it, and to be able to meet the person, I'll tell you, I was a nervous wreck. I mean, I was fortunate enough that your family allowed the chief at the time to contact me and say, hey, look, he's in the hospital, he's going to survive, because I really didn't think you would, only because it's very difficult to survive those type of scenarios. And I didn't know what caused it. I was just praying that for a good results, and it did come through. But when they call the second, third, or whatever time, and they go, hey, the family would like to meet you and the others involved, I'm like, oh, it was like, that's great, but I'm scared to death. Like, I don't know if I want, it's never happened before. No one even could tell me that it's happened before. We do have people stop by the firehouse to thank you for helping with their fires or their cars or things like that, or accidents. But someone to this, I'd never met anybody that I and it was a very singular thing because again, I wasn't dispatched as a team. So anyway, it was very unnerving. So yeah, I had to throw some humor in there to break the ice and make you feel, a little more comfortable because, you're a kid. I had sons the same age and I know how they react. And it was very uncomfortable for everybody because what do you say?
Yeah. I just want to make one point really quick to everybody. Probably should have said this in the beginning, but if you have questions, you can definitely throw them in the Q&A and we'll answer questions at the end. And I know Bob and I are both very open. I'm very open about what happened that day and my medical condition. And Bob's open about, what it was like to respond. So if you have any questions, throw them in the Q&A, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. I just want to talk about that day. And one of the things that really sticks out to me, and now this was, 16 years ago, and that day where we came to the firehouse is still a very vivid memory in my life. And it, as nervous as I was, having the opportunity to meet you all and interact, I mean, we were there probably for a few hours. And it was,
I think we had lunch.
yeah. And it was just amazing to see how much, you all cared about me and my family, despite the fact that you had never met us before. And it gave me a newfound respect for, EMS and volunteer firefighters and, EMT professionals and what they do, because they are responding to complete strangers, and they care about these people like it's their father, their brother, their son, their sister, their mother, like really like it's a close friend. And that was the most eye-opening thing for me that day, was seeing how much and how basically just how happy you and the other EMTs were that I was there and that I was doing okay. And that was amazing for me to see.
Well, I mean, it's basically it's good medicine for everybody to
Yeah.
smile and have
Yeah.
good outcomes and, do a group hug and
Mhm.
have, because it's tough out there. The
Mhm.
paramedics have it extremely tough. You're responding to everybody's worst day
Mhm.
and it can wear on you. So you,
Yeah.
you need these pluses, you need these smiles, you need these good outcomes. This is why you do it. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't do it for, again, you don't do it for glory or whatever,
Mhm.
but you do it for your personal, and it is a calling to a lot of people, and the guys that get paid to do it, I mean, a professional, I mean, it's a career. I mean, they love it. I do it on the volunteer side. It's just my personal being. I could not stand
Mhm.
sitting on the sidelines wondering, wow, I wonder if I should help.
Mhm.
I help. And in Mike's case, it was it was just everything lined up. It was probably the most important help day I've ever had.
Yeah.
And again, too, I consider myself extremely fortunate. So to pull us all together and have something good to talk about, it doesn't matter when I run into any of the other paramedics that were involved or anybody that was involved that day,
Mhm.
we always say, hey, how's Mike?
Mhm.
How's he doing? It's a good thing, and I have to put a little shout out for Annie, who was one of the lead paramedics at the
Mhm.
time, and unfortunately she's passed, but from cancer. But Annie was phenomenal.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And for us, I'm fortunately from that day, and after going through recovery and um I got through my senior year of high school and went to college, and today my life is really normal. And that's truly, when we talk about the chain of survival, the 6 links in the chain of survival from the American Heart Association, that is the goal, right? The goal is, if those 6 links are put into place, that the person survives and can go on to have a normal life. And I've been so lucky and blessed to have the opportunity to do that. And I just want to kind of talk to Bob and my relationship. We connected that day for the first time. Well, I guess the first time for me, the second time for you. But we connected that day, and we've been able to develop a relationship and a bond since that point, where we've obviously we get together every August 24th for a celebration. And we've done it in various different settings. We've done it at your house, my house. I think we moved in Olyeda College the one year together on August 24th. And
Shout out to Aaliyah.
yeah, we've and I just want to talk about, and you had a health setback a few years ago, and you know, when you were diagnosed with cancer, and you know, you can talk to it as well, but you know, having this relationship and being there for you, you know, and taking you the chemo, just kind of shows, you know, how strong our relationship has been.
I
And
mean, I like I said, I have my family, but I have this extended family that just that wasn't ever planned, and just to include your parents and your
Yeah.
brother. It's like my family room
Yeah.
and all your friends. Oh my,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just I was truly blessed, and really feeling every day that we do get together. I was diagnosed in 2015 with male breast cancers. Yes, men get get breast cancer also. And when I had to have surgery, I didn't want anybody in the room except my wife Tracy and things like that. I didn't want my sons or anybody else to be there. Mike, you showed up.
Yeah.
You were like not saying no.
Yeah.
And so the first person I actually saw after my wife in my recovery room after having a full right side mastectomy was Mike. He was there. He wasn't going to miss it for anything. And then it really meant a lot. And I know we had some conversations, but I was pretty well out of it. I have no clue what was said.
Yeah.
I kind of had to laugh about that a little bit because it was the same way early on with you. Anyway, and then you know, going through some of the chemotherapies and stuff, Mike always called, do you need a ride? Do you need a ride? Do you need a ride? And there was a couple times I needed a ride, and he I think he did twice, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
He took me to chemo and sat there for 3-4 hours, however long it was, then drove me home. I think he took me to lunch,
Yeah.
but again, because of the drugs that
Yeah.
I think we went to lunch. I have
Yeah.
no memory of eating or going out, but Mike was there. He made sure I got home safe. So he paid it back. And that, you know, again, there's no tit for tat or equal, but it just shows as close to my sons as family as anything that we've become. And again, even teaching CPR classes together, because you became an instructor and standing in front of this classroom right here in this building and teaching people how to do CPR that extends out. We've done a lot together. I mean, at all your events, I try to help out with the EKG screenings that we do, and whatever we can do. But my wife Tracy is involved as much as we can. Leah shows up. My sons show up. Everybody. Again, it's a big extended family, and it just continues on.
You know, one of the things, you know, before we wrap up here, I just want to talk about, you know, we've had the opportunity to present and talk about our relationship, and we kind of touched on this before. A lot of people in your situation don't get this, and in you know, that profession, you're just kind of expected to do it over and over and over and over again. And that is, you know, what you do, and people are happy to do it, but it's challenging emotionally. And, you know, we've presented about this before. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on, you know, maybe if there's any like advice that you have for people in your situation that are responding to calls and maybe don't have an outlet to express, you know, how they're feeling. You know, it's hard.
It is. And, you know, we have programs through the department, and anybody that's a responder, please use them. Talk to somebody, get help, because we play tough guy, tough girl, whatever your position is. We can do it. We can hold up. We can. It will build. I'll tell you, I had a very difficult time after the situation with Mike. I broke down and cried that night. I didn't know. I didn't think he was going to make it. And I'm like, man, I just witnessed somebody die. That's horrible. But my biggest thing is I was so happy when you survived. But, you know, then I actually, believe it or not, I don't know how much I discussed it with you, but I went into some depression over it because I had a fear of, what if I got called again and I wasn't able to perform to the level? What if I'm not good enough that day? And I had a tough time, and you have to talk about it, and you have to, I mean, I'm talking about it now. I mean, and that's part of the therapy, because we're not made to hold things in, and we're not tough people, and we're caring, and we're loving, and we're giving. Otherwise we wouldn't be in this or these type of positions. You gotta get those bad emotions out and talk about them, and you got to work through it. So use your AARP, your whatever programs that you have, go talk to somebody. I mean, I've had many people, you know, when we did that class, that talk down in by a fluke, we happened to be at the same trade show. Where was that? In Louisiana, New Orleans, and he's doing a talk to first responders on meeting their rescuers, and I happened to be there. And I sat there, and I mean, I had more people come talk to me afterwards about how'd you handle the stress of doing that. And I'll tell you, I told them I didn't do a good job. I made believe, I put that smile on my face, but it was hard. Because you really do want to perform to the top of your ability. And every morning to this day, I still pray that I can, perform to the highest level of my training and capabilities for a good outcome. Because I don't know what stress is going to do to me. I don't know what the situation is going to do to me. I just pray and hope that I can perform to the best level and provide the best care and service, or just even if it's help the old lady across this, recognize somebody that needs help and go help them rather than wonder what I should do. And just try to perform it to the best of your ability, whether it's even being nice to your family, your dog, your cat, your Stanley, whatever it is, just be the best you can be, and you feel good.
Yeah, definitely. So, I kind of want to wrap up and say this, and the purpose of why we did this webinar is obviously, I have no problem sharing, my story, and Bob has no problem sharing his side of the story, and we talk about it, and it's not to kind of talk about us and what happened, but really what it is it helps raise awareness, and that's the most important thing, and we've seen on a personal level in our community, what the awareness that has been raised and the impact that it's had. And we could talk about it for hours because it's been great. There's other lives that have been saved.
Unbelievable.
But the goal is really to help people understand, our mission and the importance of the chain of survival, the importance of people being trained in CPR, the importance of AEDs and why they need to be, everywhere within 3 minutes, and the important role of, EMS and and Bob and his team and the people that helped, save me along with Bob that day. And that's really the reason, because, we feel that, the more awareness that is raised about this, the more it's talked about. We don't want other communities to wait until somebody almost dies or dies and then realize, oh no, we should have more AEDs. We should have, more people trained. We should, do whatever. We want it to be more proactive, where these communities are set up so that if something happens, that community is prepared to save their life. And I find myself a lot of times saying, when I read a story of someone surviving sudden cardiac arrest, oh, that person got so lucky. And what I really try to get myself to do is change my narrative and say, the person didn't get lucky. Wherever they were was prepared to save their life. And we shouldn't be relying on luck for sudden cardiac arrest victims to survive. It should be, prepared ahead of time. So, I just think like the awareness and talking about it helps us do that. So last call for some questions. I know we had one come through here. And the question is this. I've been pushing for 30 years as a firefighter, paramedic, that we should do a follow-up with everyone involved in a field resuscitation, but especially with citizen responders. Do you get any pushback on HIPAA on patient follow-up? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
it's different nowadays. So you do, and everybody's afraid of HIPAA, and violations, and we should be. I mean, but again, you have your SOPs and your policies. You got to follow. And ours were followed. The family, everything was clear to the chief. Even in the meeting here at the firehouse was clear to the chief. As far as I know, right? So we're you got to follow. It's hard, and there should be follow-up, but there's also, even just amongst ourselves as the team or the responders, we need those open days. And you know what? I personally, after all these years of doing this stuff, I don't believe they should be off-site. They should be away from the
Mhm.
the environment, and just to relax, like
Yeah.
sailing and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, or anything that's not just those days where let's just talk. What do you want to talk about? But yeah, we should absolutely do more follow-up for mental health reasons. I mean, because it's a stressful thing. You guys that do this every day for a job out there, it's hard. And
Mhm.
I acknowledge it. And I got lucky, with Mike, and I've been a volunteer, and to get up every morning and know you got to go do it. And you don't know what's coming. Yeah, it's the excitement and the roar and the sirens and everything like that. But we all had those bad days, and there's
Mhm.
skeletons in your closet forever until
Mhm.
somebody opens that door, and they either come rattling out or you come
Mhm.
take them out.
Mhm.
And if you can do it in an organized manner through professional help and stuff, we should be doing that for everybody.
Mhm.
And I know there's a lot of systems out there. Just take advantage of them.
Yeah, totally.
Sure.
So I think we're good on questions. So I'm just gonna, finish up and say this, again, the goal of this webinar, I think mostly is to raise awareness and really push other people to do what we talk a lot about, and that's to be a heart champion and be prepared. So if there's any way that we can support you individually, your community, and organization you're involved with to help be better prepared to save someone's life from sudden cardiac arrest, please never hesitate to reach out to us because we will always do whatever we can to help. So again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here. Bob, thanks for taking the time to do this with us.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you taking the time. So have a great day, everybody.
Take care.